What's good, y'all? Welcome to another recording or episode of DTYDT. I'm your host, Zay. Excuse, my last few live videos. It's been a lot of audio difficulties and stuff like that. Well, audio adjustments. So, um, yesterday I went live and I talked about a few different things, about the wealth transfer. And there's some things I mentioned in there about how, we don't really understand the capacity of what's going on out there when it comes to money, assets, um, and value that, will grow over time. So I have, right, these videos, right, that I'm going to bring up. And oh, it's gonna be. Can I make that smaller? Oh yes, I can. Right, there we go. Awesome. Okay, so we was talking about the monetary value and inflation and whatnot. So I will have the links to in the description of the channels, right? Matter of fact, I have the links to the channels in the video, and I'll also have the link to these videos in the description box. Please, 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 guys, yo, this is very important, right? And I know my channel is basically Christian based, but the information that we need is not always gonna come from people who are Christians, people who are believers, right? And this particular one, Anton, I do believe he is Christian, and he do believe in God, Jesus Christ, right? But that's beside the point, right? We already know the scriptures. My people suffer for the lack of my people suffer for the lack of knowledge. We also know the wealth of the wicked is laid up for the righteous. That don't mean they're just gonna give it to us. We have to know how they steward that, right? So let's get into it.
Would you rather be broke in New York or would you rather be broke in London? Would you rather be broke in New York or would you rather be broke in London? Now, what kind of question is that, Anton? Would you rather be broke in New York or would you rather be broke in London? Well, the reason that it's framed like this is because these are the most expensive cities, or at least they are on the list as the most expensive cities for you to live in. And so the question then becomes, what is life like to live in New York or to live in London? And do you have the ability to be able to survive in such a place and be able to thrive? This is for the people that refuse to travel, people that refuse to get outside of their comfort zone. I told y'all on Fight Club that I wanted you guys to start to experience life from different perspectives and in different places. Shout out to my people over there in South Africa tapping in. I'm going to read that super chat shortly. But I want you guys to understand and to look at things a little bit differently. And this is the reason why I'm having this conversation right now. Make sure you tap into the Patreon. Link is in the description as well as pinned to the top of the chat. Let's continue.
New York City and London have each been called the greatest city in the world, but they're not easy places to live.
New York City is...
Hey, Centennial G, tell me what the story is that you wanted me to cover, because it might have went away because I had buffering, and so I had to fix the live stream earlier like that. But let me know what that is, or send me an email to antondaniels413@gmail.com, and I'll see if I can cover the story. Shout out to Aaron. I'm going to be reading that super chat shortly.
To more than 8.3 million people and was ranked one of the most expensive cities in the world in 2022, tied with Singapore. whereas London, with its nearly 8.8 million residents, was deemed 28th most expensive. The cost of living in New York is higher than in London. It would cost approximately $9,500 US a month to maintain the same lifestyle as about $7,200 would get you a
Get your calculators out.
$9,500 a month, which is the equivalent of over between $110,000 and $120,000 a year. That is the bare minimum, and I'm assuming that is after.
Also, in the U.S., right? How long would $100,000 a year be good enough, right? To just more than survive? Or at what point was $100,000 a year went from being living luxurious or lavish to actually, making by barely making ends meet? At what point and how long did it take for that to happen like that? Right?
Taxes, meaning that if you just make a mere $100,000 a month or $100,000 a year, which equates to the equivalent of about $67,000 after taxes, and you don't have any businesses, write-offs, you're not making anything more than that, then you are going to be, according to this, based off of the cost of living, by yourself, you will be suffering. Now, I've always broken this down, not based off of what I can get away with, but what will my ideal lifestyle be? Because my goal is to maintain a lifestyle to where I have the option to do whatever it is that I want to do. If I want to go and live in New York for the next 2 to 3 years, if I want to, chances is that I would never do that. I'm not interested in living in New York for the 2 3 years, but I might want to live there for a summer, right?
And usually people would say, like, yo, I just want to be comfortable. I want a safe neighborhood. I want, school, transportation, or if they have a car or whatever. Not accounting for what it actually cost. Not only the price, but what would you have to sacrifice for that style of life that you want to continue to pursue, right? You can't just go and get what you want because you want to get it, or you think you need it, right? There are some other things that, and unknown to a lot of us, that are going on in the background that are siphoning off not only our energy and our time, but also our finances, our cash, our savings, even our purchasing power, right? If you actually look at things in those different aspects. But let's continue.
What would be the true cost of living there, instead of having to subject myself to what's available to me? And so that's how I break things out. That's why this video is so interesting to me. Let's continue.
in London.
I spent so much more money when I was in New York.
But New York City residents tend to earn more money than Londoners, so businesses are able to charge more.
Without any contest, New York is a lot more expensive than London. The appetite for price gouging, I think, is much stronger here. Like, there is much more of a sense of, like, what is the most I can possibly charge? Rarely do they feel that way in London.
UK residents tend to pay more in taxes than people in the US, but the difference is less stark in New York City than the rest of the country.
In general, the tax burden in Europe is far higher than it is in the States. On the other hand, that also means that a lot of kind of what we would deem public services is much more expensive in the States because you have to pay for that on top of the taxes.
The difference between New York versus what you would see in London isn't as large for, local income taxes, but it is significant for sales taxes, where you have relatively low sales taxes within New York. The UK has a value-added tax of 20%.
So how much does it cost?
What? A value add tax of 20%?
If they even know what that is.
That's crazy. That is insane. I would even go so far as, because I'll be in Miami later on this week, because I'm always there at least 2 to 3 times a month. I would even go to say a lot of people just look at the entirety of the city, because one of the reasons why New York is very expensive is because it has over 8 million people there, right?
I
If
didn't even
you
know
are
that
in
much could fit in
Miami
New York.
and you live in certain areas, most people that actually live in Miami that are native there, they don't go to the beach. They don't go to Miami Beach. They don't go into Brickell. They're not in a design district. If you want to live a certain lifestyle, I would say that it could be even more expensive than what you would experience in New York, depending on what it is that you want out of it. Telling you, it's nothing to be driving a Lamb. Yo, when I'm in Miami, I have the Lambos. I usually have a Urus. They don't look at that. They don't be like, "Oh man, that's sick." They don't do that. That's normal.
Nah, I really thought he said a yurts. You know how never mind. I know what he talking about.
Like you jump out the Urus, you just jump out the Urus. You get out the Urus. That's
Nah, I was thinking about this episode in Black AF. I'm not sure if any of you guys seen it, but they was at the table, and I think the wife was talking like to her old friends, like her old friend from like school or college or whatever. And I don't know. I guess like she came off. Well, not I guess she came off wild crazy. How she talked about the people family and stuff, but he's like, nah, they was talking about going glamping. And he's like, oh, I want to, go glamping. Like, who we going camp out in the yurts? So he's like, oh, who call it yurts? He's like, oh, the people who actually, it was funny.
you get out of the Cullinan, you get out of the Cullinan. Nobody is tripping out on it when you in certain areas, because it's gonna be another one that pull up right behind you. That's a normal SUV. You are very, very normal if you pulling up in a Urus out there in Miami.
Years.
Cost to live in New York versus London, and why are people willingly paying so much?
Hi, my name is Lucy, and I'm a 25-year-old New Yorker living in London.
Lucy has been challenging herself to limit her weekly budget for everyday expenses to $150 US.
This is day 2 of trying to spend less
I
than
see you,
$150
Centennial G.
in a
Thank
week
you.
living in London.
It was so interesting to compare how expensive New York is with other cities across Europe. It really makes you conscious of how much you're spending.
Let's start with your biggest expense, no matter where you live. Housing. Rent prices in New York City are about 47% higher than in London.
A one-bedroom in the city center averages around $3,800 in New York.
Do y'all think that that's expensive? Just curious. Do y'all think that $3,800, this is the average. Do y'all think that $3,800 a month is normal when it comes to an apartment in New York? Do y'all think that, would you be able to stomach that? Is that, because I want y'all to start reconditioning your mind to think about what the possibility is. Not that you would ever do it or that you would subject
It hit 2,500. People be, man.
yourself to it. But do you think that, is that something that you think that you would be able to survive on? Because you also got to understand that when you go over to another city, you're in a different culture, you make more money, you got a different perspective, you hustle a little bit differently. Do y'all think that that's something that you can stomach?
In London, a comparable apartment would cost nearly $2,600.
Rent is cheaper in London. In New York, my apartment was
Reading super chat shortly.
$1,800 a month for a not tiny but not gigantic studio.
No, that's very tiny. She basically just showed you a studio. It got the kitchen right next to the bedroom. If you turn the grease up too high, then it's going to get on your bed and it might burn the bed
If she
sheets.
said 15, that's definitely,
That's very, very small.
consider
There's no
that.
walk-up
here.
building, there's no laundry in the building.
That's
you
good.
can control the heat. So like mid-tier apartment. In London, I pay
Pricing,
Couldn't
that
control the heat. Had no laundry in the building. A studio apartment paying $1,800 a month. That's considered mid-tier. That's mid-tier.
is. Ooh.
I just want y'all to know what y'all dealing with.
1,300 pounds, which I believe is about $1,600 for a room in a 6-bedroom house, we have laundry, we have a garden, we have a gardener, we have a housekeeper. I do think the current house that I'm in is expensive for London, and I would be able to find something cheaper if I wanted. I've never had a backyard before, and it's so nice, and now I don't want to leave it.
Hi, I'm Lily Slater. I grew up in London. I now live in a studio apartment in Prospect Heights, which is an equivalent neighborhood, is like an Islington in London. There, I could get a 1-bedroom for the cost of my studio.
Grocery prices also are 70% higher in New York. Except for milk and cigarettes, common food items are between 20.
Grocery prices are 70% higher in New York. Grocery price. Look at this. A potato, 1 pound potato is 189% higher in New York than it is in London.
Just in case y'all can't see
Oranges,
the percentage,
110% higher. Lettuce, 179% higher
hopefully I can see that.
in New York than it is in London. Water is 75% higher. So now,
And just in case y'all don't really know how to do the percentage, it's basically the price, the regular price, right? Let's say the regular price will go, let's put it on London right now. The regular price is that price, but in our currency, right? When you purchase it in New York, right, what it's basically saying is basically the regular price and how much is that, how much times that, right? So let's say bread is going for $1, right? And they say, yo, bread is 200% higher over here than over there. So that means bread is $2, right? 200%, no, I think that might be 3. Hold on, let me make sure. Yeah, bread is $2. Or 3. I just confused the hell out of y'all.
now
Let's
y'all
stay
can
tuned.
start to understand what I talk about when I'm saying that your own personal inflation is much different than what it is that they're identifying in the reports and the monthly reports as far as what inflation is across the board. Your inflation is going to be different in LA than it is in Ohio and Cleveland, right? Inflation is going to be different in New York than it is in Indiana. Inflation is going to be much different in Miami than it is over in Detroit. Inflation is going to be much different in every single place. And so you have to then consider the nuances and the details. When this inflation report comes out, they're talking about it over, from a broad perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But depending on what you live, where you live, what your lifestyle is, what you drive, how much you pay for groceries, whether you own businesses or whatever, your own personal lifestyle is then going to justify what inflation is or what inflation or how you're affected for you. I don't remember the last time that I went out to eat that I paid less than $100. And that's cheap in some places. I was so surprised I got a bill, what was it, yesterday? Yesterday, our bill was $76. I was like, wow. It's pretty impressive.
7% and
Bitcoin, you're buying 1/21 millionth of all the money on the network. Would you want to own one?
Right? So that was the first video, right? I already have the link in the description with that. That's the Millionaire Morning Show, Anton Daniels, right? This one here is basically, it's going to be giving us a deeper understanding of how digital property and currency works, right? And different ways of how we are able to store our wealth, right? Without it decreasing over time and without other people having it in control. Okay? So hopefully you guys understand the correlation he's going to start making with all the different different analogies that makes perfect sense to if you actually want to have it as a asset value or currency value, right? But let's just get into it, man.
21 millionth of all the money in the world in 10 years, 20 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years.
My question to you is about how specifically the average regular person can benefit from Bitcoin, because we just talked about institutions. Obviously, you're a successful public company with cash flow. You put it on your balance sheet. I understand that. I understand institutions. But the average, the normal person in the U.S. making $60,000 a year, I like a good beer, saving up for a jet ski, got a wife, soon-to-be wife at home. How can I best benefit from Bitcoin?
Well, I think the best way to...
Right, and the video before this, he was talking about people, or basically the conversation was, can you live in New York on $100,000 a year? Now, he just mentioned 60,000, saving up for a jet ski, soon to be married, child. Let's continue.
To think about that question is to consider the alternatives people have. So you're a normal person and you want to save money for retirement or to give to your kids. So you put it in a savings account, you get 5% interest. The monetary inflation rate is 7 or 8 or 9%. You got a negative real yield of 3%.
So I have to stop there, right? You'll get a 5% interest on keeping your money in savings, right? But the value of the money that you're already saving is already being devalued. So even though you're making more on it over a yearly period of time, the value of what you're holding is still going down in a different aspect, right? I mean, your money will still look like how much you put in there and whatnot, but the value of other things is going to go up. So now your purchasing power actually decreased. All right, let's continue.
If you end up with a negative real yield of 3.5%, then over 100 years, $1 million saved is worth $30,000. Okay, and so for the average person, saving money in bonds with a 3.5% or 4% interest rate when the currency expands at 7 or 8, that's a losing proposition. You lose 97% of your wealth over the course of 3 generations. So clearly, bonds don't work, right? And savings accounts don't work. So the next question is, do I just put all my excess money in the S&P index? Well, traditionally, the money supply in the U.S. is expanding.
Just in case you don't know what the S&P or the index is, the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ, right?
7%, and the S&P index is going up at 7%. So if you save $1 million over the course of your life and you put it all in the S&P index, then in 100 years, it'll be worth $1 million. So that's wealth preservation, but you're not doing any better than that. And that just kind of assumes that that the S&P 500 is going to be relevant for 100 years and you can stick around the country. But it's like treading water. The next issue is, well, so what I put in real estate? If you buy real estate, you're an average person. Can you buy a building? Probably not. Can you buy a warehouse? Not easy. Maybe if you're a rich family, you buy warehouses, right? Rich families buy warehouses, city blocks, and buildings, but the middle class person doesn't. So how do you buy $4,000 worth of a building? Can't. Okay, so the issue there is your property rights are inferior when you're buying shares of stock or a security versus the underlying property. If you own the building, you can mortgage the building, sell the building, upgrade the building, build 10 floors above the parking lot that the building has. You can develop the building. When you own a share in a REIT that owns the building, like you own 1/100th of the building, you don't have any of those rights. You can't do anything to the building. You're just along for the ride, getting 1/100th of whatever cash flow the general partner decides to distribute to you. And if they make stupid decisions, you're stuck with them, right? You don't have any property rights. Your inferior in your economic rights. So owning shares of a REIT to get property for 100 years, not a great idea. And that leads us to the problem of,
just in case you don't know what a REIT is, a real estate investment trust, right? So it's like, you know how people do real estate, they flip their houses, or they go in with some money and then, you know, with somebody who flip houses, or however, or they rent it out, or however they go about it. A REIT is basically the stock form of that. So you don't have to go to a physical place all the time. You look at certain companies who are into real estate, who do, and you can basically purchase that, you know, that stock, which is a real estate investment
securities.
fund.
What is the problem of security? So you have some money, you invest it in Apple stock or Amazon or Facebook or Google or a REIT that owns a building. The dilutive problem with securities is there are risk factors. First of all, there's a management team. They're going to take 1%.
So, as companies, right, like Microsoft, Google, all that stuff like that, basically saying there are risk factors of when investing, or basically trying to have that money or that collateral as your weight to throw around, right? You're basically people who have finances and whatnot. Basically, they are able to do things that other people with no money are not able to do, you know? So pay attention.
Every year. They're not doing it for free. They're charging you to manage the company or the building, right? And if you're lucky, that's only 1%. You want to see that in action? Just go look at any ETF. The ETFs charge 90 basis points. You know, if you want to put money into a Bitcoin, BITO, or whatever, they'll charge you 90 basis points just as the management fee. So about 1%. What's the cost of 1% over the course of a lifetime? An infinite duration asset, you would basically multiply it by 20, 25. So it means that when I charge you 1% to manage your $1 million, I'm taking 20% of your money. Okay. I'm taking 20% of all your wealth to charge you 1%. So that's only the first problem. It turns out that when you run a company, you also have you have the risk of labor, right? Your company may unionize. So you've got labor expenses, and what happens to the equity value when the company unionizes? Well, the union just takes all the profits, and the equity values of those companies start to trend towards zero. So labor is another risk. The third risk is your competitors, right? Your competitor may come up with a better product and you end up like Yahoo squeezed out or AOL squeezed out by Google. Well, then your stock's going to zero, right? I mean, how many companies actually had a competitor? Xerox, Kodak, world's full of great companies. Where are they today? They end up getting squeezed by competition. The fourth issue is technology, right? You may just get obsolesced, right? Maybe you own natural gas fields or oil fields and someone creates nuclear power plants and they don't need your oil anymore. Or maybe you sell the world's greatest chemical cameras and people don't need cameras anymore. They have digital cameras, right? There's always that kind of risk from technology. And then there's execution. Maybe you just don't ship the iPhone 47 to be that good, right? Maybe the iPhone 13 is good and the iPhone 15 is not good, right? And, you know, and the world's full of examples of that, like Firestone tires or something, and I ship a tire and the tire blows out, and now people stop buying my tire. Or New Coke. Remember New Coke is a product launch that didn't work out well. So when you're investing in a company, you're not just getting a pure investment. You're actually getting an investment in an asset, but you're getting hammered and diluted by force majeure, by, you know, bad weather. You might get a war. You might get a tariff or a trade war. Like we just decided to put a tariff of 20% on all Chinese imports. Oops. If you had a factory in China, what happened there? And then maybe you get a real war. Where someone just impounds your ship or blows up your factory. That happens too. We have real wars all the time. So what's the return on the S&P index? 7% a year. What's the monetary inflation rate? 7%. What's really happening? Well, all these companies, they're just barely holding their wealth. And so what would happen if I got rid of all those risks? What if I had What if I could buy a product that was never going to obsolesce, that's good for 1,000,000 years? What if there was no management team and they work for free, right? What if the product is run by computer programs that don't charge a fee? What if there's no labor? What if it's a digital product, so there is no chance to block it via trade war or destroy it via real war? What if it was an indestructible, immortal, incorruptible product? Well, when you buy a Bitcoin, you're buying 1/21 millionth of all the money on the network, or all the money in the world that's ever going to be on that network. Okay, so
Right. So what he's saying with something as with the value as that, and basically whatever you hold is only gonna grow in value because of there's only a certain limited supply of it. It basically shows you that it can't really be stopped by all these things how other companies have been stopped, and not just companies but individuals, right? People who are interested in holding not money per se but actually the wealth, right? So basically where he was comparing it to companies and stuff happening to the companies is because if the company is basically based off the US dollar or that type of system, right? It's inevitable for that company to fail at some point in the future, right? Because he also said over 30 years, right? Over 3 decades, certain things that was working don't work anymore just because of that law of how that type of monetary system works, right? So what he's trying to say, what he's saying about Bitcoin is just like, yo, it's already there, it's not controlled by any person, right? And basically over time the value of it is going to go up. So even if you're in it or not, it's going to go up. But you might as well be in it because that's where your wealth is going to be held. That's where your value is going to be held. And it could be collateral for a lot of different things. And there's so many different things that's going on with blockchain. It'll really give a better understanding of not just how money works, but how wealth works, how business works, right? But again, this channel is Altcoindaily. I have both of them in the description in the bottom, right? For these exact videos. I do suggest following the channels and all that because the information they give out is actually more life saving than we would actually like to think. So I do appreciate y'all for tuning in, for watching. Make sure y'all drop a like, comment, share. And I'm gonna catch y'all on the next one, alright? Peace.